Peace, everybody. It's Mumtahana with Beyond Clouds. How are you? So I'm sitting here, sort of meditating, and I had a thought, something I've been wanting to touch on in the video for quite a while, but haven't made the time. And that is, not too long ago, I took an African American course, and aside from me being like the oldest person in there, which is often the case, sometimes I'm quite older than the professors. And there's a whole bunch of young people in there, very much drenched in what I consider to be black supremacy. This whole idea that black people are basically the best of the best. Everything came from black people. Every creation was created by black people. Blackity black, as they say. And oftentimes, the information that they have is terribly wrong. Because a lot of times they get things, off TikTok and stuff like that. And somebody made the video, so they just go with it because it sounds good. It means that, yeah, black people, it feeds into the idea that black people are, the cream of the crop. And, that's a whole other video. But again, a lot of the times the information is incorrect. And what I learned too is that sometimes even the professors don't know what they're talking about, and they co-sign all this stuff. So I very often had to say, like, that's not true. Go and check this out. Go and check this out. And so that they can learn. And because again, and not just young people, because the professors are, this professor particularly is younger than me but much older than them. And so one of those things that they were misinformed about is that African people, that white people went over to Africa and made deals with other Africans, like it or not, made deals with other Africans to bring enslaved people here to the Americas to, force them to do free labor and stuff like that. And as well as their descendants for many, many years. That is not true. And so the idea is that white people had to go to Africa to get Africans because they tried it over here with Native Americans first, but that they were just so weak and just didn't have it in them to be slaves that they went over to Africa, because apparently Africans are very much made for being slaves, as well as their descendants for hundreds of years. And so, first of all, that is despicable. That's just simply despicable. And I think people get so riled up and caught up in this whole black supremacist mindset that they don't even think about that. They're just like, yeah, we better at everything, including being slaves. I'm like, what? That's so weird. So not only is that ridiculous, but even the idea that indigenous people here in the Americas were so weak that they just couldn't hack it. And so white people went on over to Africa. And also, just sort of piggyback off that they were so weak that they couldn't take white man's diseases and they were just dying off. Yeah, they were dying off because when white folks came over here, nasty as can be. And over here, they didn't, their immune system wasn't built for that. I mean, our immune system's not really built for that nowadays for a lot of stuff. And so it's not because they are an inferior people. It's because white folks was nasty, like I said. But also pertaining to this idea that, they were also too weak to be slaves because, again, they just didn't have it in them. Thus, Africans were brought over here. That's simply not true. So the thing is, enslavement of indigenous people had been outlawed, whereas enslavement of African people and their descendants was not. It was legal. But that doesn't mean, if you know anything about Europeans, colonizers, here or anywhere, you know for sure they're not just going to listen to the law. Like, come on. So what they did is they still had slavery of indigenous people, or enslavement of indigenous people, but sort of under the table. So it was done all over the place. They would even ship them over to Europe and things like that. And certainly throughout the Caribbean and West Indies, that was happening. And but again, it was off the books. So I would really love for people, generally speaking, but certainly African American people, to do more research on that before you keep on regurgitating or sharing these false narratives. And there's a book called The Other Slavery that I think would really be informative, mind-opening for you to look into. And again, hopefully move you in a direction of researching more, because indigenous people were being enslaved long after emancipation of African American people, well into the 1900s, and dare I say, still are. But we've come to learn about industrial schools and stuff like that. But also they were straight out forcibly taking indigenous children from their homes, forcing them to give up their culture, give up their language. Again, this went on for a very long time, much longer than African American slavery here in these lands. And it was no less brutal than it was for African American people and African people. I don't know, it's so weird, because I know a lot of black supremacists, and for sure I used to be one back in the day. I grew up in black neighborhoods like everybody else, who have these ideas. And being around people who oftentimes their education is not varied. So they may only read books from other black people who have the same supremacist, ideologies and stuff. And they don't have to actually show evidence. They just say, this is what it is. And it's like, yeah, But again, oftentimes has no validity. Another big, misinformation that African American people have, that I hear sort of regularly, sort of like a common idea, is that indigenous people should not be included in talk about reparations because they have already received reparations. Absolutely false. Absolutely false. I don't know where people get this from. They think that Native American or indigenous people get all this money from the government. First of all, if they did, it would be deserved. It's not like it's a handout. But they think they get all this money from the government. They think everybody goes to school for free. They think they get all this free land. They think that if they can prove that they can have indigenous roots, that they can also get free schooling and free land and all this crazy talk that just absolutely is not true. Indigenous people, Native American people, do not get reparations. And the little bit that federally recognized tribes get is not nearly what they should be getting. But beyond that, in speaking about reparations for African Americans and people still talking about all this land, one of the things that burns me up, and I know it's not the fault of black people or anything like that. They just don't think about it. It's like, this is what was promised. I want what's mine. But what you think is yours was never white folks to begin with, and thus they should not have been promising anything to black people, to African American people. Period. It's not theirs to give. So in actuality, in my opinion, If black people are to get reparations, it should not be the land, because the land doesn't belong to the government. It doesn't belong to white folks, and therefore they cannot give away something that does not belong to them. Therefore, it also does not belong to black people. Now, I do believe that some money should be passed off, that some education should be passed off. Whatever the case is, government ain't giving all these black folks no money, I don't think. And then, I guess like these people who always talking about ADOS, blackness is not a real thing. Sorry to tell you. Just as whiteness ain't a real thing. People so quick to say whiteness ain't real, but they be black all day. But blackness is not a real thing. Therefore, it is ultra nuanced. So look at me. I identify as a black woman / Afro-Native woman / Bahamian American woman, and so on and so forth. I can do that. Those are really my roots, and not like 15 generations ago. But it's too nuanced. So the government will have to give so much money away. They ain't doing that. So I do believe that black Americans should be given reparations for all the havoc, not just that was done to the people back in the day, but also what is still being done now because of what was done back in the day. But likewise, I absolutely believe that indigenous people deserve true reparations, only starting with giving back the land. Get up off that land, hand it over. So it's going to take a lot of fighting to do that for both red people, black people, whatever you want to call it. It's going to take a whole heck of a lot of fighting to actually have those things come to fruition. But yeah, that's something else. So those are some of the things that I notice. So it gets looked over. And right now, during this election season, everybody's talking about the VP running for president and stuff like that. I do believe that she's going to end up winning. But what I do not agree with a lot of her policies. I know people are up in arms about the whole Project 2025. I don't want it any more than anybody else does, but I do not believe that she is the person that should bring us forth. I do believe that the best candidate is Jill Stein. It doesn't matter to me that she's a white woman. That got nothing to do with nothing. Black people screw black people over all the time. We need to get that through our heads. But the only person that I've seen anyway, maybe I need to do more research, I don't know. But the only person I've seen thus far who seems to be trying to think of everybody, humanity, here, locally, and abroad, is Jill Stein. And miraculously, she actually has indigenous people on the agenda. People overlook indigenous people all the time. Only time they want to think about, Native Americans is during November, during Thanksgiving or something like that. But they never have indigenous people on the agenda. Personally, I think that if indigenous people came through with the votes, if Muslim people came through with the votes, white women, black people, everybody who is on this whole, train of, well, nobody's going to win but VP Harris. So I don't believe in everything she's saying. I don't believe in her stance on, Israel and Palestine. But she the one who can, stop Project 25. I hate to tell you, she's not the only one who can stop Project 25. But 2025. But also, we are forever on this wagon of, just got to pick the lesser of two evils. We're always going to be picking the lesser of two evils, but it's still evil. And nothing, I'm 52 years old, nothing will change from us choosing the lesser of two evils. Now, when saying that, I understand that anybody who's into politics, you're going to have to do some stuff here and there. sometimes you gotta take that L. Even parents know that, right? Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. You got people out there on the block, you know, slinging and rock and all that kind of thing. Sometimes you feel like you gotta do what you gotta do, and that could very well be so. If you're going to, you know, if you're gonna sit down with the devil, there's some things you're gonna have to do. But I think it's all about, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to compromise? And I just really think that Jill Stein is not willing to compromise as much as VP Harris or anybody else is willing to sacrifice. And maybe not even sacrifice, maybe even truly believe what it is they're doing, which I do believe VP Harris is all about that Israel life. But plus her husband is what, a Zionist or something, I read. But that's neither here nor there. I do believe, again, that if everybody who is so afraid about, you know, like they don't necessarily want to go with VP Harris, but, you know, she's the one who's going to win, and we got to stop Trump. You know, we're always moving in fear, man. Always moving in fear. And these, you know, companies spend billions of dollars figuring out how to get the people to move in the way they want to, because, sorry to tell you, most of us are followers. We're not really that, you know, intellectually or politically, you know, adept. And they have us move in fear, like, all the time. And so we're willing also to, I think that we are not really, well, all the people that's always talking about they're for humanity and that they're empaths and that they're about love, if that was really true, we wouldn't be in the position that we're in, and so many people wouldn't be going with the, you know, the gems. But yeah, I say all that to say that in speaking about Native American reparations, Black American reparations, the deading of Project 2025, I think that Jill Stein is the way to go. She is the one who's talking about doing things for everybody, including women's rights and all that. I think it's going a little bit too far, talking about giving free, you know, menstrual products to everybody. Like, is that important? I don't know. I don't have those issues anymore. But anyway, yeah, y'all, do a little bit of research, and sorry this became a political video, but I guess I'm just feeling some kind of way right now. Peace.